we're joined today, and happy to be joined today, by lawyer Payam Akhavan, who joins us from Montreal after the recent decision by the European Court of Human Rights to forbid Turkey from prosecuting or criminalizing genocide recognition. Mr. Akhavan represented Taner Akjam, and they brought forth the case. It was Mr. Akjam's case. I must imagine that, first of all, thanks for joining us, and secondly, it must be a bit of a happy time for you.
Well, it has taken us 4 years and the tragic death of Hrant Dink to achieve this victory. So it comes at a cost, but we feel that it is a truly historic victory because the only path towards reconciliation between Turks and Armenians is if the dialogue wins over denial. And for the first time, the European Court of Human Rights, in a decision which leaves no ambiguity, no doubt, has expressly stated that the Turkish Republic cannot in any fashion criminalize those that are engaging in scholarship, journalism, or other discussions on the Armenian genocide. So I think in that respect it is a happy occasion, but unfortunately it has come at a cost.
Yes, at a very heavy cost. Does this mean that people who choose to discuss and present materials about the genocide no longer have to live in a form of fear in Turkey? Can you go that far? Can you say that unequivocally?
No, I wouldn't go that far. I would say that hopefully in the near future that will be the situation. We have to appreciate that this is a long struggle. We're approaching 1 century in 2015 since the genocide. And I believe that there are pockets of Turkish society that are quite sympathetic and receptive to free discussion and dialogue on this issue. And there are other pockets. The point is that when the Turkish media and academy is not able to reach the Turkish people with this message, then it's obvious that the message of denial will be the only one that the people receive, and that there will be hostility. So the significance of this decision is not the decision itself, but how courageous Turkish citizens, whether ethnic Turks or Armenians or otherwise, exploit this decision and use it to begin to openly discuss the events of 1915, the continuing effect that it has on Turkish democracy, on respect for human rights, and then we will begin to create a climate in which scholars and journalists will have to fear discussing this issue. But I believe that there is still a struggle ahead. I don't believe that the ultranationalists are simply going to throw their hands up in the air and say, well, the court has made this judgment and we're going to no longer intimidate or harass those that speak contrary to our views.
Sure, of course, but there has been traction recently in the courts. We talked a little bit off camera about what was brought forth by those associated with Hrant Dink in 2010. What's different in this week's decision versus the decision that was made during that case?
Well, the case of Hrant Dink against the Turkish Republic was largely focused on denial of his right to life, liberty, and security, which ultimately resulted in the finding that the Turkish Republic had not done enough to protect him against such harm. So the case that we brought was less retrospective and more looking at the future. And we believed that part of the legacy of Hrant Dink must be a case which goes beyond the fact that the Turkish Republic failed him and really bring the discussion back to the real issue. Why are those that speak about the Armenian genocide being branded as criminals and being made into targets. So in that respect, this case had a different focus. And of course, the case was brought by Professor Akçam, but it is clearly a case of wider application for the numerous others that have been in the past or will be in the future potentially prosecuted under Article 301. And the court does not specify exactly which measures the Turkish Republic must take. But one thing that it makes very clear is that any legal proceedings, criminal prosecutions relating to scholarship on the Armenian genocide is manifestly in violation of the freedom of expression under Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. And that is the single most important victory in this case.
In terms of specifically Article 301, does this case, in your opinion, signal the end for it? And if it does, or even if it does not, are there other levers in place within the Turkish code that would allow for restriction of speech in other ways, other levers for restricting speech on an issue such as the genocide?
Yes, I believe that this is not the end of the story. And what is important, as I mentioned earlier, is that enlightened thinkers, public intellectuals, activists, concerned citizens in Turkey and civil society across the international community use this judgment as a platform for putting into effect the decision of the court. And this is an ongoing struggle. But one thing that is clear is that the Turkish Republic can no longer, in good faith and without significant international criticism, prosecute anyone that has published a book or conducted an interview or what have you on the Armenian genocide. It's always possible, if one acts in bad faith, it's always possible to find some other legal basis for doing this, some other pretext. But I think that this judgment has made it far more difficult to now surreptitiously, indirectly find some other means of silencing these people. And at the very least, free thinkers and proponents of democracy in Turkey now has judgment as a powerful instrument with which to resist any such attempt in the future.
So potentially this creates a little bit of momentum, specifically for those people who are pushing for genocide recognition. If that is the case, kind of play PR agent a little bit. In what way should those who are pushing for that recognition play this decision? How should this decision be used in arguments, in persuasion, or whatever it might be?
Well, the word genocide recognition can mean many different things. It can mean, for example, that in the National Assembly of France, there is a resolution recognizing that these events occurred. But what I think is much more important than those sort of overt political acts is recognition in the wider public in Turkey. That, to me, is far more important for long-term reconciliation than some sort of bargaining and compromise among foreign ministers of Armenia and Turkey and what have you. I generally place much more faith in the decency of the average person to come to terms with the past and to allow wounds to heal and to forgive and to move on to a better future. So the point is not that the Turkish Republic is now going to recognize the Armenian genocide. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. But what the significance is that we've now created a democratic space within which people can debate and discuss these issues. And recognizing the Armenian genocide is also not a singular act. It's not that I issue some presidential decree, we hereby recognize the Armenian genocide. But what does it mean to recognize the Armenian genocide? And the abstract, I think it doesn't mean much. What we need to look at are the stories of the millions of victims, their intimate account of their suffering, the consequence that has had on Armenians throughout the world over the past century. And it's that sort of humanization of the discourse, rather than its politicization, that is going to allow for healing and reconciliation. So in answer to your question, I would say, well, yes, this has helped create a momentum, a basis for recognition, but I would submit that the type of recognition that we should be thinking about is not merely a political act, but a much wider dialogue within Turkish society itself and within and between Armenians and Turks.
Piggybacking off of what you're saying, does it make it even that much more important that these cases have been brought forth by Turkish citizens?
Well, that's a very good point, and I was particularly pleased that my client, Professor Akçam himself, was an ethnic Turk, and that there's a message there. The message is that this is not an anti-Turkish crusade. On the contrary, by allowing open dialogue on this issue, Turkey helps lift the burden of its past. In a sense, one should ask, why should this generation of Turks constantly haunted by what happened a century ago? Well, it's because of a misguided policy of denial. And we've seen from Germany's sort of coming to pass with the Holocaust, and even here in Canada are coming to pass with the treatment of our First Nations or Aboriginal peoples. Every society has some past that it has to come to terms with. So the message here is not that this was an Armenian lawsuit against Turks and it was about demonizing the Turks. You know, I'm not Armenian, I'm Iranian, my client is Turkish, and this is not about whether you're Armenian or not. This is about the truth. It's about coming to terms, reckoning with the past, seeking truth, seeking justice, and the message really has to be, which is considered the message of Professor Akçam, that this is a victory for democracy in Turkey, and that it is not that far from making discussion of the Armenian genocide a crime, the Turkish Republic has to understand that it's a prerequisite to any meaningful reconciliation.
Sure, Mr. Akhavan, thank you so much for joining us. I do want to finish with this. Based on the decision of this week and assuming if there is an appeal process, it goes rather quickly, is there anything else that needs to be decided in the courts, or is it now in the hands of the Turkish people to move forward with their legacy?
The Turkish Republic has an opportunity to appeal the decision, and my sense is that the Turkish Republic is not likely to appeal the judgment, because I think that their legal counsel would tell them that they will fail. I would even think that some of the more enlightened elements within the government of Turkey are actually happy about this decision, because if they were to try to amend Article 301 in the Turkish parliament, they would be confronted with the ultranationalists, and they would be portrayed in a very false light. The beauty of the court decision is that those elements within the Turkish government that realize that this sort of nonsense has to stop also now have an instrument at their disposal to go to the National Assembly or wherever it is that they're going to remedy this problem and say that, well, we have a judgment of the court, there's nothing we can do, our hands are tied. and it becomes that much more difficult for ultranationalists to attack the moderate forces in Turkey. So once again, the value of this judgment is that it also helps moderate forces within Turkey that are intelligent enough to understand that it is in Turkey's interest not to continuously be burdened by the events of a century ago, which means that truth, transparency, and justice is both in the interests of Turks and Armenians.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We will continue to stay in touch, and all we can do is say thank you. So thank you.
Thank you.